Good morning. My name is Willie Lawson. This is the morning report. Um, this is really sort of going back to my roots. This is a hard thing to do. Uh, I'm kind of doing this without lots of notes and scripts and that kind of thing. I just want to talk to you for a little bit. It's a hard day. As you know, it is September 11th. It is Thursday. Yesterday, Charlie Kirk was assassinated, was murdered in front of thousands of people, including his family. The killer is still on the loose, and before we can catch our breath, this day, Freedom Day, is upon us. It's not. It's September 11th, 2025, and it is the 24th anniversary of one of the worst days in American history. This, unlike January 6th, is indeed tantamount to Pearl Harbor. It was the day that America was attacked by radical terrorists. And because of what I do for a living, I talk to young people all the time. And I was having a conversation or a discussion, or I don't know, it wasn't that, it wasn't that deep, but the student that I have actually sort of figured out that he asked me, so when did 9/11, and how we talk about it, when did that happen? And I said, it was 2001. And he said, I wasn't even born yet. No, because he's 11 or 14 or whatever. Um, and so what I know is as things are going on, there are, no matter how much we say, never forget, never forget, never forget, there are a whole bunch of people who don't remember it because they weren't alive when it happened, or they were tiny babies when it happened. And those folks are some of the Gen Z people who are starting to get into, voting, and they're in college or they're just getting out of college, and what they're lacking is perspective, especially perspective in recent time. So all I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through the timeline, and if anybody is interested, and I mean, in sharing the video to someone who may have been very small, may have not been born yet, about the timeline. Very simple. Here's what happened that day. Now, a lot of us, especially if you're a gray beard like me, you remember exactly what you were doing. You remember exactly what happened all day. And you remember how you felt. Let's start at 8 a.m. These are all Eastern Daylight Time, Daylight Savings Times. At 8 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 left Boston Logan for Los Angeles with 92 people on board. 5 hijackers were on that plane. 4 minutes later, at 8:14, Flight 11 stops responding to air traffic control. This is shortly after takeoff. This is when planes are, getting their instructions on when to move to higher altitudes, and I mean, this is a busy time on an airplane. And Flight 11 stops responding to air traffic control. At the same time, United Airlines Flight 175 also departs Boston Logan for Los Angeles, and they have 65 people on board, including 5 hijackers. 4 minutes later, a flight attendant on Flight 11 alerts the ground crew that the plane has been hijacked. She probably used her cell phone. At 8:20 a.m., 1 minute later, American Airlines Flight 77 departs Washington Dulles for Los Angeles with 64 people on board, including 5 hijackers. Now, you may wonder, well, why were these 3 flights headed to Los Angeles? Because they were all full of fuel. They were all topped off because they were going to make the nonstop trip from Boston to Los Angeles. That's why they were chosen. 4 minutes later, at 8:24, hijacker Mohammed Atta transmits a message to air traffic control that says, "We have some planes. Just stay quiet and you'll be okay." At 8:37, this all happens in a half an hour, right? Boston Flight Control notifies the U.S. military, the Northeast Air Defense Sector, about suspected hijacking of Flight 11. At 8:42, United Airlines Flight 93 departs Newark for San Francisco. Again, a cross-country flight because it's full of fuel, with 44 people on board, including 4 hijackers. They would have left sooner. They would have left at 8 o'clock, so they would have all been clustered, but the flight was delayed for 42 minutes. 4 minutes later, after Flight 93 leaves Newark for San Francisco, Flight 11 crashes into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York, striking between floors 93 and 99. First responders are immediately dispatched. Now, let me break out of the timeline for a second. I was working at a local high school then, and I was late getting to work. And I walk into the building, and I make the turn down the hallway, and I see my friend Bev Sutherland standing. She was a chorus teacher that said the school, standing there staring at the television. She's in the room by herself. Because I pass a kid in the hallway and I ask him what he's doing out of class. And he tells me in an excited tone that his teacher is crazy. He left the room because his teacher had lost her mind, because she was saying that the world was coming to an end. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And then she said, and he tell me, "Well, you don't know that a plane has crashed into a building in New York." Okay. So I go and stand there next to my friend Bev, who's staring at the television. And I just stand next to her. And at 9:03, Flight 175 crashes into the South Tower of the World Trade Center. I just walked up to the television, and then we looked at each other, and we thought the nation realized that this is a coordinated terrorist attack. Not a series of accidents. This is a coordinated attack. The nation is under attack. I remember standing there, and we just stared at each other like, what is going on? 2 minutes later, at 9:05 a.m., President Bush, George W. Bush, was in a classroom. His chief of staff, Andy Card, whispered, "A second plane has hit the second tower. America's under attack." At 9:21 a.m., Port Authority closes all the bridges and tunnels in New York City. They shut down that area. At 9:24, the Federal Aviation Authority notifies NEADS, that's the Northeast Defense people, that Flight 77 may have been hijacked. President Bush delivers brief remarks to the school, calling the crashes an apparent terrorist attack. No one knew. And 6 minutes later, Flight 77 crashes into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. 5 minutes later, now, if you can imagine all of this, when I say 4 minutes later, 5 minutes later, 1 minute later, all this is happening in real time. It is happening like this, like lightning is happening. We went to school. We haven't had lunch yet. I think that we hadn't gotten through the second period. So things are happening at a feverish tempo. 5 minutes later, the FAA grounded all flights across the United States. Everybody, no matter where you were, no matter what you were flying, you had to land. Find an airport and land. So in just in that creates an incredible amount of chaos, right? If you ever look at FlightAware 24, or if you ever look at any of these apps that show how many planes are in the air at any given time, when the FAA says everybody's got to land, no matter where you are, but you're saying I'm heading 1,000 miles away. I'm 1,000 miles away from home. I can't turn around and go back. They didn't care. Wherever you were, you had to land, which put a lot of planes, not just commercial aircraft, but private aircraft, in the wrong place. They grounded all flights across the United States. If you were flying internationally, let's say you had flown from Germany and you were headed to Colorado, and they had to put down in Charlotte. Yes, you are a long way from home, but you weren't going anywhere. This is the level of chaos that day. This is the level of fear. If you're young enough to not really understand what was going on, this is the kind of stuff that was happening. Imagine that right now. That happened at 9:42 a.m. A few minutes later, at 9:59, the South Tower collapses. It had been on fire for about an hour, about 56 minutes. It just collapses, and that's not something that people expected. It just collapsed. It's like somebody pushed it down from the top. It just collapsed, and there was dust and soot and fire and all sorts of ugliness everywhere. Four minutes later, this is what I'm saying. These things are happening at lightning speed. 4 minutes later, Flight 93 crashes into a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, after some passengers fight the hijackers. Investigators are under the belief that the target for that aircraft was to crash into the White House or the US Capitol. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? One plane goes into the Pentagon, another plane goes into the White House or into the Capitol. Can you imagine? And as that happens, 25 minutes later, the North Tower, Tower 1, collapses after it was burning for 102 minutes. Well, this is all happening in real time. We just got to third period in class. For those of you who might be in high school now, or you have kids in high school, sort of gives you a reference about how these things were happening. At 11, from 10:30 to about 11 a.m., emergency evacuations continue all across Lower Manhattan. U.S. air defenses intelligence scrambled to determine if more hijacked planes are in the sky. Now, remember, the order has been given all across the country: land. Wherever you are, land. You find an airport and land. So imagine all these planes are trying to find an airport that's appropriate to land at. You just can't land a 737 at Tampa Executive. The airport, I mean, the airstrip is not long enough. So you have to, all these planes are lining up, especially the big planes at major airports, to try to find a place to land. And even if they do land there, for some airports, there's not enough room on the ground to put all the planes. It's chaos. Absolutely freaking chaos. Right? All the smaller planes are trying to find regional airports or municipal airports to put down, or the ones that have notice. Because if you're flying your Cessna 172 or 152 at the time, you may not even know that this is happening. You may not even be aware that this is happening. Yeah, it was chaos, absolute chaos. So at 11:02, New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani orders the evacuation of the entire lower Manhattan south of Canal Street. 13 minutes later, American Airlines confirms that Flight 11 and 77 were lost. They were crashed. They confirmed that. And a few minutes later at 11:59, United Airlines also confirmed the loss of Flight 175 and Flight 93. Now, this happened right at noon, but everybody's still wondering, are there more planes? Is this going to continue to happen? Because it happened in such quick succession and in such a coordinated fashion. Everybody was still wondering, when is this going to, is this going to stop? Are we done? Or do we find everybody? And where we live here in Central Florida, not far from MacDill Air Force Base, um, which is CENTCOM, where a lot, if not all, of the operations that were happening in the Middle East are all run from CENTCOM. I'm not telling any secrets. Everybody knows that. We have a lot of military families in our area, and as I was at school that day, there was a steady stream of parents coming to sign their kids out. Now, I don't know if they were safer in our building. It was a big friggin' school, cement block school, or in somebody's home. But there was such fear, terror. And people just want to be close. They just wanted their children with them because they didn't know what was going to happen. So if you again, if you are someone who was really young at the time, um, my son was about to turn 11. It was his birth. It was the day before his birthday, so he was about to turn 11, 10 years old. And at a lot of public schools, a lot of schools, they just had the TV on the entire time as the teachers were watching. Um, it was at a private school, and they decided not to do that. They decided not to show those planes going in those buildings exploding and film at the time film of people jumping out of the buildings because they don't want to die burned to a crisp. They decided to commit suicide and hop out of the buildings. Speaking of that, I have a video on here on YouTube that I did a couple of years ago that actually uh, got deleted and got me a strike for self harm when I posted pictures, which is why I'm not posting any pictures in this video of that day, not one, because I don't want to deal with that. And you wonder, and there's so much videotape, and there's so much, and there's so many photographs. I'm not posting any photographs or videotape of that day. This is just my account of what I was going through here, and people hopping out of buildings, out of the World Trade Center to their death, for sure. But that was the choice that some people took. Wow, you would hop out of a 90-story building. I have on Spreaker, and I will try to find it and put the link in the description of a 911 operator. Interesting. Um, Talking to a person in one of the towers that was in a floor above. Excuse me, because I can't even listen to that show anymore. That was it was in one of the towers above where one of the planes went in. The 911 operators were told if they got a call from those people to stay with them and comfort them, they weren't going to make it. Can you imagine? They were not going to make it. and they knew it because rescue people couldn't get to them. They couldn't go up to the roof. Helicopters couldn't land. There was too much smoke. It was too dangerous. Those people would have died of smoke inhalation up on the roof anyway. Um, they were going to die. Everybody who was in those buildings above where the planes went in, they were going to die. And 911 operators were told just stay with them. And this particular 911 operator did just that. Um, as this person was screaming for help, and then the tape goes to the very end. You actually hear the building collapse. I'm not going to play that here. I'll put the link to the audio in the description if I can remember to do it, so you can hear it yourself. It is terrifying, and this is and because we don't young people or younger people don't have that the context to this. They really don't understand it. They hear you and I talk about it, but what they don't get is what it was like that day. So from noon to 1 o'clock, this is all Eastern Daylight Savings Time. The UN headquarters in New York was evacuated. All the U.S. embassies and federal buildings around the world were closed and or evacuated because we just nobody knew. Everybody was this had never happened here in the United States. The United States had been blessed because of distance. We've heard of terrorist attacks in the Middle East. We've heard of terrorist attacks in Europe, but because of proximity, the United States fell into this false sense of security that we are safer here or safe here because all that stuff happens over there. None of none of that stuff can happen here. But at 104, President Bush, speaking from Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana, declares, "Make no mistake, the United States will hunt down and punish those responsible for these cowardly acts." 23 minutes later, the city of Washington, D.C. declares a state of emergency. 2:45, that's 2:49, the U.S. Navy dispatches hospital ships to New York and to Washington. 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, rescue workers continue to search the rubble of the towers. Fires are still burning in both the north and both in New York and at the Pentagon. The U.S. all financial markets are closed. Everything shut down. At 4:10, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld holds a press conference from the Pentagon, from the press room in the Pentagon. At 4:30 in the afternoon, President Bush departs Barksdale Air Force Base for Offcut Air Force Base in Nebraska, which is the Strategic Command headquarters. Because now you have the president in Air Force One, and their job was to make sure that whatever happened, the government kept moving, that the government didn't shut down. So you had to protect the president. The legend of this is that George Bush was basically screaming at people because he wanted to go to Washington. Now his family is in D.C., right? They're they're in the catacombs of the White House. They have places underground where they're protected. But he wanted to get back to DC to show the nation that we were still viable, that we had not collapsed. We were shut down, but we had not collapsed. So late in the afternoon, World Trade Center Building 7, a 47-story building, collapses. So it had not been, and because this is a lot of, and listen, if you comment on this video and you guys know who you are, I'm not going to fight with you. I'm just going to delete your comments. That's all. I'm not going to fight with you. I'm not going to go back and forth with you. I'm not. I'm just going to delete. Going to delete your comments. Building 7, 47-story building that it had not been hit directly, but fires and structural damage are cited for its the cause of its collapse as well. All right. And as the evening goes on, almost at 7 o'clock, at 6:54 p.m., President Bush departs Offutt Airport and heads to Washington, D.C. At 8:30 that evening, from the Oval Office, President Bush addressed the nation. And this is one of the quotes. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. So by midnight, all U.S. airspace is closed to all civilian flights. Only military and emergency flights are permitted. First responders continue to rescue operations at Ground Zero and the Pentagon. Nobody knows how many people are dead, but thousands. We know it's thousands. This is something that I don't think that young people can wrap their head around. What we knew was that there were thousands of people, thousands in one day here in this country. Wow. Here's the full arc of the day. 4 hijackings, three targets hit, nearly 3,000 Americans' lives were lost. And the world fundamentally changed in less than 16 hours. 9/11. So when we say never forget, we have to be able to tell the story. It reminds me, I was just in a production of Hadestown. We have to tell the story. It's a sad song. It's a tragedy. But we have to tell the story. We can't just say never forget. We have to tell the story. Maybe it'll work out this time, but you have to tell the story. So if you have a platform, and I mean, I don't mean a YouTube channel. I mean, if you got a Facebook account, tell the story. Tell the story of where you were. Next year will be the 25th anniversary. I hate to even attach the word anniversary to it because anniversary is normally a happy thing, you know. In a few months, I will be celebrating my 38th wedding anniversary. 38 years. Yeah, this woman is a saint. She's put up with me for 38 years, damn near 40 years. Crazy, right? But tell the story. If you don't do anything else today, tell the story. Tell it to somebody. Not just somebody who was there. Maybe somebody who was a teenager, or maybe somebody who was a toddler, or somebody who wasn't born yet. Tell the story. Let them know what was going on around you. Don't fill it with conspiracy. Just tell the story. Till we see you again. Go out there and learn something, love somebody. And for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We'll see you when we see you. Bye bye now.